Welcome to Team Sites and Workboxes. My name's Rob, and over the series of the next 10 videos, I'm going to share with you everything you need to know about working in team sites and workboxes. If you're completely new to the idea of team sites and workboxes, what we recommend is you watch all 10 of the videos in numbered sequence. So here we are at the moment in video number 1. During this first video, we're going to discuss what workboxes and team sites are and explain to you why they're useful and some of the key functionality that you'll gain by using workboxes and team sites. For those of you that have been using team sites and workboxes for a while already, you might choose to use the videos in a slightly different way, and you can feel free to jump to any video and watch them in isolation. So, for example, if all you need to know is how to deal with security, you can jump straight to the security videos and watch those separately. If you prefer to view information in a step-by-step guide rather than a video format, that's available as well. To actually support these videos, we have a 60-page document, so a 60-page document that's available electronically, and it contains the same information but actually broken out with diagrams and step-by-steps to read at your own convenience. So, let me just introduce the two core topics of workboxes and team sites and explain to you how they relate to the work that you're going to do on a daily basis. So, at the moment, a lot of the work that you do would actually be captured and worked on a network drive or a shared drive. So you might navigate to an S drive or a P drive or a H drive, and your department might share lots of information. So typically on a regular basis, you might well be generating or working with Excel spreadsheets, emails, Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, photographs. A whole variety of information is generated every day. As an organisation, we identified that the way we manage that information could be massively improved. As part of that discovery process, we realised that working in network drives, there was a few specific things that didn't work very well. Let me just give you a few examples of things that traditionally didn't work very well and talk a little bit about how workboxes and team sites can help you with that. First of all, there's the idea of lots of old information being around almost forever. Think about a project that you might have finished 3 or 4 years ago. All of the documents and information about that project are often stored on the same network drive and the same set of folders alongside your current projects and the projects that are about to start. What that can mean for a lot of people is that when they're trying to find information, they struggle to find the current, good, accurate information because of the vast amount of old historical information. So one of the first things that this method of working in team sites and workboxes will provide for us is an easy way of grouping together related information and marking it with a status. The status could be something that's very simple. It could actually say that the workbox is open and therefore we're actively working on it. Or we could say a workbox is closed and therefore, in terms of day-to-day running of the council, that information is not needed. We can still look behind the scenes and look at closed information, but actually it's the open information that we're interested in 95% of the time. And that's the stuff that we see when we first move around the system. So that's the first thing to note, that workboxes and team sites will provide us with a simple way of grouping together related information, a bit like a folder, but much more sophisticated, and actually identify whether this is current active information or whether it's information that we don't really need to see every day. So that's going to help us when we're moving around the system trying to find not just documents that we've uploaded, but documents that maybe other teams are working on as well. Another thing that working in a workbox will do for us is it will allow us to clearly indicate ownership. So, as an individual user, you might not think that often about who owns a particular group of documents, but as a council, we need to really be aware of that. So, what we wanted to do was allow you to group together information that was owned by each team. So imagine if I represent the housing team. If we were about to start a new project which is being driven and managed by the housing team, what I might do is go ahead and create a new workbox and declare it as being owned by the housing team. Automatically, that will then mean that everyone in the housing team, so whether that's 10 people or 200 people, however many people are in there, will gain access to that documentation. Also, it will be easy for us to invite other people from different teams into that workbox as well. So there's the idea that initially we have an owner of this information, and then that owning team can invite other teams or individuals in as well. The great thing about this is that the ownership can change over time. So if there's a project that maybe started in the housing team, but actually we now need to hand it over to finance or to a different department, we can actually change the ownership, and automatically that will invite the other appropriate teams in and remove some of the people's access. So imagine a project that I start with over here, I change the ownership and say, right, this is now controlled by information systems, everyone in information systems can now work on it, and I can no longer work on it. So it's actually taking a process that normally would have been security driven, which might have been quite tedious and potentially quite a risky or dangerous process, and by actually encompassing it as ownership, it now becomes really simple. So by default, every workbox, which is an area where we can store information, has one team that owns that workbox. If you actually go in and you create a new workbox, it will always be owned again initially by one team. And again, if you've never kind of thought about things in this way before, some of these things we're doing are designed to help you as an individual. Other things we're doing are designed to help kind of at a higher level for maybe the team leaders or at management level. So hopefully most of this you will see direct benefits from. Now, one more thing I'm going to mention just before we move on and look a bit more at the structure of how team sites and workboxes relate to each other. Traditionally, something that's always been a little bit awkward to do is actually taking a copy of information from one place and actually either moving the original file or placing a duplicate of the file in another location. It's always been maybe a little bit fiddly to do in the past, a bit awkward. So as part of working in a workbox, it will now be very easy to take a file and actually either move it from one location to another or take a copy of it, a duplicate from one location to another. So working in a workbox will provide us with that functionality. All we've done here is highlighted just a few of the benefits of working in a workbox. I want to reassure you a little bit that actually when you do your day-to-day work in a workbox, when you're working on policies, when you're working on spreadsheets, when you're working on reports, for example, that day-to-day work will still happen within Word, Excel, PowerPoint, maybe Outlook, the programs that you already are aware of. What we're looking at here, a workbox and a team site, is a different location to store the information. So rather than the traditional yellow folders that we're used to at the moment, imagine taking away those yellow folders and actually having a system that provides lots of benefits. So it's a more sophisticated system in that it has additional functionality, but the great news is this has been created and it's completely unique to Islington Council, so it's customised to try and fulfil some of the requirements that you guys have as a council. So hopefully when you look at it again, you'll be able to quite directly identify, yep, that's going to help me do this, or yep, that's going to help us avoid this particular problem that we have. And again, the further we get into these videos, the more these benefits will become obvious to you. Okay, right, before we get into the practical demonstrations in the rest of the videos here, we've got just a little bit more theory to cover in terms of these objects and how they relate to each other. So let's just crack on with a little bit more of this theory. So, much of the unique functionality that we've just talked about, the idea of closing and opening workboxes to identify whether information is current or if it's old, the idea of ownership and changing ownership to secure and share information. So all these new things we just talked about, the place that you're going to find those when you're working within a workbox is across the top of the screen. There will be a fairly large button labelled as Workbox. So you can see in the screenshot here, just a static screenshot I've got for you, this one. You can see here it says Workbox. By clicking on that tab at the top of the screen there for Workbox, it shows you this ribbon that I've got pictured at the bottom of the screen. And this ribbon is all the newest functionality that we have. Okay? So this is where we'll find the things to deal with security and the status of the workbox, things like the copying or moving of files. There's icons in this ribbon to do all that and quite a few extra things as well. If you actually watch all 10 of these videos, you actually get to see what almost all of these buttons do. There's one or two of those buttons that are kind of specialised that don't get talked about in this particular set of videos, but we talk about almost all of those. Okay, so we know that when you go into this thing called a workbox, it'll be a place you can store information, and you know that you'll look at the top of the screen to get into this workbox button and get all this great functionality. One of the things we've not really defined yet is, well, how does a workbox sort of separate itself from a team site? What's the distinction between the two? If you think about how your organisation is broken down, at the moment you are already separated into teams, and again we keep using the example of housing, but we know there's lots of different teams within the council. In the diagram that I've got here, you can see in blue, housing, in brackets, have their own team site. So everyone that's part of housing can come into this team site. When they come into that team site, which they actually access through Izzy, so they log into Izzy and they see their housing team site there, you can see actually one of the first things they see is a list of all of their workboxes. So imagine again the housing team, very busy team, always busy. Think about how many projects and kind of ongoing things that they might have, including small things like meetings. Let's say that each time we have a team meeting, what we might do is create a new workbox. You can see here we've got workbox A and workbox B, and actually that list could be much longer. We could have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 or more workboxes. The idea is that the workboxes that we see there are all the ones that are owned by the housing team. So let's say if I'm in housing and I make a new meeting workbox, everyone that's in housing will automatically be able to see and access that meeting workbox. If someone works in internal systems or finance or human resources, they will not gain access to that information initially. If I want to invite them in, I can do, but by default, I can actually say, right, this information is housing related, and I can actually restrict or control access just to housing.